information and a response for you on any topic. Want to provide a little more insight on steps that we are taking to address the budget realities that we face. I don't know that there was as much meat on the bones to the skeleton we announced last week, so I wanted to provide a little more information specifically on what we are doing with the 180 non-union City of Toledo employees who are going to take 5 unpaid furlough days over the next 5 pay periods. These are, folks who are in classified positions, and really across the board. There's 180 of them. In addition to those 180, and we're talking, our directors and commissioners, senior staff, myself included. I am going to also sort of give back to the general fund, as it were, to contribute to digging out of the hole that we find ourselves in right now. In addition to that, there will be 19 employees from the Toledo Municipal Court who are going to take this same furlough. The total savings that we will enjoy from these furloughs will be about $336,000, $182,000 of savings in the general fund, and $154,000 from other funds, whether those are utility funds or SCM&R or any one of the other accounts that employees are paid out of. But the total savings is $336,000. Again, we are all participating in this, myself included. Every department of city government has stepped up to share in the difficult decisions that we've had to make. And this is just another piece of that puzzle. I wanted to make sure that the media knew that that was happening and what the dollar amounts were. There have been questions about issue 1 that have been raised from time to time, either on social media. I know members of the media have had questions, and I think now, in the context of the budget, I want to talk through. I want to talk through some things in terms of what, of how we are thinking about our payroll income tax collections in the context of issue 1. I think, as everyone knows, issue 1 is a proposal that City Council put on the ballot last year. There was a pretty robust campaign regarding issue 1 for the first several months of this year. On the day that Governor DeWine postponed the election, 10,000 voters had already voted on that issue. Now, there's no question things have changed since those initial 10,000 voters voted. But the election was underway, and it continues, and it will end on Tuesday. I think, as we all know, it is an absentee-only election primarily. If you want to vote, if you haven't voted yet, you want to vote, you'll need to do so with an absentee ballot, and it has to be postmarked Monday, and the election closes on Tuesday. I mention it for this reason. I think all of you would concede that we haven't run much of a campaign since the crisis began. Not that we don't believe in it, we do. In fact, I have in the past, and will again make the case it's more important to our community than ever that issue 1 pass. But from a campaigning standpoint, it just hasn't been a priority of ours. We've been sincerely trying to put one foot in front of the other and to keep people safe and to keep people alive. That's been our focus. So you haven't seen the news conferences, the TV commercials, the balloons falling from the sky, and and all those other signs, all those things that you normally associate with the campaign. Just haven't done it. It just hasn't been a priority. But the issue is still on the ballot. Again, 10,000 people had already voted on this thing before our world changed. So you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. One way or another, we are going to find out on Tuesday whether issue 1 passes or it doesn't. We, in the scenarios that we are running with our finance department, we are going to be able to react to a world where either it passes and we have a series of options that would lead us toward, or it doesn't pass, and that opens up a different set of options. The scenarios we are running involve both passage on Tuesday and the issue failing on Tuesday, and we will react to it and be prepared for it regardless. And I do believe and know that we will emerge from the situation we're in a thoughtful and collaborative manner. I will say that, in my judgment, it is more important than ever that we pass issue 1. And I highlight this because I think it reveals perhaps a philosophical point, a philosophical value of mine that I believe has the support of members of City Council, but there may be some members of Council with whom I may have a policy difference. It's not an indication of anything other than just an honest difference of opinion on the importance of public works and capital spending during times of economic distress. This is a theoretical question in some ways. The New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, is still debated to this day, whether that was something that helped the country get out of the Depression or whether it was actually the beginning of of citizens' reliance on government programs that is unhealthy. That's a robust debate that people can have to this day and do have to this day. I am one who believes, and I think a more accurate telling of history indicates, that during times of economic struggle, that a robust program of public capital spending is crucial to help an economy get back on its feet. I think that is the lesson of the New Deal. I think that is the lesson of jobs programs and work programs. Long before we were facing the reality we're facing on COVID-19, I know all media was represented. I'm not sure who was covering this news conference, so I don't know if you individually were in attendance at my State of the City address. I know your news organizations were. I spoke about as clearly as I know how about my belief that a robust program of public investment not only is what we need in Toledo today, but it is what helped Toledo become the city it was in the 20th century. And it really did save the city from the Great Depression. I believe that. I think history supports it. That's why we had my State of the City at the zoo, because so many of those buildings at the zoo were built with public dollars at a time of robust public work spending. At the time that I made those points, I talked about the buildings at the University of Toledo and the High Level Bridge and all of the metro parts, all of the many examples of public spending helping lift our city and our country out of the Great Depression. At the time, it was a little bit of an academic exercise in my mind, to be really honest. Now it's become real. It's become real. And while it was always important, in my judgment, and I believe in the minds of voters, to fix our roads, it has become crucially important now from the standpoint of public work, that we have a mechanism in place to make sure that our economy can recover. Now, maybe others don't agree. Maybe those who subscribe to the viewpoint of history that the New Deal ushered in the nanny state, where citizens became addicted to federal programs. That's fine. Again, people can disagree in our country. 326 million people. 326 million different ideas on how to move forward. I, though, believe that at the time that we are facing, it will be crucial that we have the resources to put our community to work. That's just what I believe. And I will, I stand to that. I stand with my belief that now is a time that we need to invest, not just because of what it will do to our city, but what it will do to our workforce and what it will do to our economy. At a time when unemployment is going to be approaching 25%, perhaps, we're told in the next couple weeks, there's going to be an awful lot of people who fix roads, who put roofs on shelter houses, who dig up tennis courts and improve them, who make improvements to the Ottawa Park ice rink that we have in mind. That it's not the New Deal, but it might be our little mini stimulus program. That's what I'm saying. All of this is possible because of what issue 1 fundamentally does. And I've said it, I don't know how many times. I'll say it again. There are people for ideological reasons who aren't going to believe it, but it is what it is. The key part of issue 1 is that if it passes, City Hall will have to spend capital money on capital projects. It will not be able to take capital money and transfer it to the general fund. Remember, 10 years ago, the last time we were facing an economic crisis like this, the city responded in the exact opposite way. The city responded by allowing capital money to be taken out of the capital budget and transferred and spent on the general fund. For the 10 years since, City Hall has gotten in the habit of robbing Peter to pay Paul. I believe we should respond to this crisis in the exact opposite way, to make sure that we have a firewall between capital spending and general fund spending. Not just because it will guarantee that we have to fix these roads, because we will have to, but also because it is a built-in jobs program. It is something that will add to the economic recovery of this community. It's our mini stimulus program. It's our mini New Deal. This is public works. These are jobs. And in my judgment, this is how perhaps the city should have responded to the last crisis 10 years ago, as opposed to allowing itself to rob Peter to pay Paul. So when issue 1 passes, we will have to spend $500 million over 10 years on public works, on building things, on fixing things, on doing things. Yes, including roads. That is why I've been able to say, and have said all along, that passing issue 1 will fix the roads, because we will have to. Even in this time of crisis, we will have to. And that's a good thing, because while we want to replenish the general fund so we can bring back our TEL employees and accomplish a number of other things we need to do on public safety and some other things, we also want our citizens to work. We want them to have jobs. We want the economic vitality of our community to be sustained. And so now issue 1 provides us that double benefit. Not only does it guarantee that the roads get fixed and all of the other things we talked about, now it also provides a jobs program for our community. There are going to be those who disagree with that, but that is how I see it. I do believe that it's more important than ever to pass it. We will know one way or another. We'll know on Tuesday, and we'll adjust to that reality one way or another. But that is my philosophy, not just on issue 1, but on a larger level on capital spending. And I mentioned this, and I think I'll just end on this part of the budget by saying that we really value the relationship we have with City Council. We really do. We're all public officials, and we have different viewpoints and ideas on the right way forward. But generally speaking, we govern by consensus. Of all the ordinances that City Council has considered since I've been mayor, now it's not quite 2.5 years, 93% of all ordinances not only have passed, they've passed unanimously. So we get along, we cooperate. I think that's what the public wants. I know there's attention always dedicated to our moments of disagreement, but we agree a heck of a lot more than we disagree, to the tune of 93% unanimity. On the budget, I think that is where we have seen the most collaboration with City Council and the most cooperation. From 1994, January of 1994 to January of 2018, the entire history of the strong mayor form of government, January of 94 to January of 2018, there was no budget task force. There was no joint mayor council budget task force. The idea of collaborating with City Council on the budget in those days was the mayor developing a budget, City Council seeing it for the first time on November 15th, and then having about 6 or 7 weeks to debate it. Not a lot of collaboration, not a lot of cooperation there. Starting in January 18, when I became mayor, we formed a task force with City Council, and now we build our budget hand in hand with Council over the course of the entire year. So there are no surprises by the time the administration produces its budget in November. We've built that document together. And it's why we've been able to pass unanimous budgets. It's why there's been such cooperation and support. And I think it's also why together we turned a deficit in January of 2018 into a surplus, the surplus we enjoyed before the economy shut off. And that continues. That continues today as we try to work through the situation we're in right now. There may be, it's probably too soon to know for sure, but there could be the beginnings of a sort of maybe a philosophical difference that some members of council may have on this question of capital spending, public spending, public works, jobs programs. And I think you may have seen, I know there's going to be some questions about it. So we saw that at the council meeting the other day with the ordinance that was passed on sort of emergency maintenance repairs, where the administration and council, when we passed the budget, agreed on a certain dollar amount. Council passed an amendment for a smaller dollar amount. And in fact, that occasioned my first veto as mayor. And I did veto that ordinance and send it back to City Council yesterday. So when council comes back at their next council meeting, they'll have an override vote. And already we know that we have enough votes on City Council to sustain the veto. So there's no question from a legislative standpoint that that we're going to move forward together. There's certainly no mystery of how that vote is going to go in a couple weeks. But the larger point might be this, and it's okay. It's a healthy point. At the core of that issue, and at the core of the veto, it was a discussion about capital money. Capital money. That's important here. While for the last 10 years, council has had the ability and has used the ability to move money from the capital fund to the general fund. I don't want that to be the case moving forward. I don't think the voters want that. That is what's on the ballot Tuesday. When issue 1 passes, council won't, none of us, City Hall won't be able to transfer money in that way. There will be a firewall. That's the whole point of what I've been talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes. As a result, capital spending, at least in my mind, needs to be seen differently than general fund spending. not because we shouldn't want to transfer back and forth. We shouldn't ever want to rob Peter to pay Paul, and I think the voters are going to prevent us from doing it on Tuesday. But more to the point, we should want to spend capital money putting people to work, doing things, fixing things, building things, repairing things. Yes, our roads, or in the case of this ordinance, the roofs of our senior centers, or the HVAC systems in homeless shelters that we own, et cetera. It's just a philosophical point. It's not unhealthy. It's not an indication of anything more nefarious than a genuine ideological belief of mine that now more than ever, we need to find a way to strengthen our economy. And like Franklin Roosevelt 80 years ago, I am one who believes that a robust program of public spending that can benefit those who are in the skilled trades and people who make things and build things and fix things, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I want to save as much money as we possibly can in that general fund. That's why I am personally taking a pay cut. We all need to work extra time focusing on that general fund and making sure that the gap we see there, a gap that we know will be at least $10 million by the end of this year and could grow to be $50 million by the end of next year. Boy, you bet we need to roll up our sleeves and make sure that we are filling that hole. I think the self-imposed furloughs and the TELs accomplish that. I do think there will eventually be state and federal aid that will accomplish that. Issue 1 may pass and help us accomplish that. All of those things are important. We need to do that. But going forward, we may find, we may not, but we may find that there is a philosophical difference on how we treat capital money. I am one who believes that now is a crucial time for us to invest in ourselves, not just because it'll fix our streets or improve our parks, but because it's going to put Toledo back to work. And that's a value I have, and others may not share it, and that's okay. It's healthy to disagree in a democracy, but I am going to always stand for what's best for the taxpayer and what's best for the worker and what's best for the citizens of our community. So just wanted to kind of put a bow on that because I know it's a question in some people's minds. As I conclude, I think I want to point out 2 other things. We all look forward to the governor's announcement tomorrow. Of all the announcements he has made during the COVID-19 crisis, I think tomorrow's promises to be among the most significant. Tomorrow, he will be announcing the rules and parameters for which businesses open on May 1st and the rules by which they will open. I'm fairly certain that you will see sort of manufacturing, retail type businesses being first on his list when he announces it tomorrow, again with rules and restrictions, but I think you'll see that first. As I stand here, I'm not sure if restaurants are going to be in that first wave of openings. I don't know what the governor is going to decide there, and that's why I, as many other Ohioans, are anxiously awaiting his news conference tomorrow when he will make these announcements. I know the expectation is that whatever he orders, that local officials are going to have to enforce these orders. And I know our local health department is aware of that, and they stand poised to meet the challenge of enforcement, which will be a much more difficult type of enforcement than what they have faced to date. In other words, when the order is essentially stay home and don't go to work, that's pretty easy to enforce. You see a large group of people, gathered, that's pretty easy to enforce. You walk by and say, disperse. It's going to be a lot tougher when some businesses are allowed to open, but others aren't. And even the ones that are open have to do A, B, and C, X, Y. It's going to be tough. But I know our health department is ready. Finally, and I know Katie Crosby, our chief of staff, is with us on this call as well. I want to give her a chance just to speak very briefly about an initiative that I know that she has worked very hard on with community partners, and that is to find new and better and creative ways to communicate with the African American community and all communities of color on the seriousness of the COVID-19 crisis. There was a wonderful virtual town hall that took place on Sunday. There's going to be another one tomorrow. There are going to be some statewide speakers on that. And so, Katie, I know I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but if you just want to talk a little bit about tomorrow's event and why we're putting such a focus on communications with communities of color, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. So in terms of why we're putting a focus on communities of color, nationwide, the data is showing that the COVID-19 virus disproportionately impacts communities of color. Much of the data is showing that because of underlying conditions, most that have to do with environment, and what people are starting to hear more and more, social determinants of health, that we're finding that there is a disproportionate impact on communities of color. And so therefore, there is not only a statewide strategy, but all across the country, communities are looking at how we explain and communicate the importance of social distancing, washing your hands, and then also protecting yourselves, especially if you are a person with an underlying condition. Actually, this evening, we have a webinar. We have a series of Facebook Live events where we have folks who are providing education on the COVID-19 virus, as well as access to resources. So this evening, we will actually have Director Hall from the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services joining us to talk a little bit about unemployment and other benefits through the state of Ohio. And so while this session is targeting communities of color, I think it would be a great opportunity for the community in general to hear directly from Director Hall. In addition to that, we have Tanya Saunders, who is the Director of Planning and Development and the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board for Lucas County. We have Kathy Tucker over NODA, which is a home ownership nonprofit organization. Shalonda Jones, who is with Toledo LISC and the Financial Opportunity Centers, and then Aisha Slyman, who is with ABLE and who will be given information about evictions and things like that. And so I think it's an excellent opportunity for the community to learn about the resources that are available, but then also the African American community to learn about those underlying conditions. We'll have more information about future sessions on the Toledo Lucas County Health Department website. These sessions are at 6 p.m. every Thursday through the end of May. So if you don't remember the session that's coming up, just remember that every Thursday at 6 o'clock through the end of May, you can join us on Facebook Live at the Toledo Lucas County Health Department website. Back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Katie, and thank you for correcting my misstatement. I think I said that the next town hall was tomorrow night. You were right to correct me. It's tonight, actually tonight, April 23rd, starting at 6 o'clock. So thank you for that. You know, I have other notes here about the various testing sites that are now publicly, we now have some public testing for COVID-19 at various sites throughout our community. This just began this week. It is free to all members of the public, and we're going to have this testing available for the next several weeks. I get the sense, though, that your news stations have already covered that pretty thoroughly, and you know, at the risk of being any more long-winded than I already am, I think it probably just makes sense to open it up to questions. If you have questions about testing, I certainly can answer that, but I think you've all done a pretty good job on reporting that. So thank you. I turned out to be just as long-winded as I always am. I thought this was going to be a little shorter, but when I get going, I suppose I can't help myself.
Mayor,
as we open to questions, is that Melissa or is that Katie?
It's Katie. I'm sorry. If I could just add one comment. I accidentally said the Toledo Lucas County Health Department website. The Facebook Live is actually on the Toledo Lucas County Health Department Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I know Melissa Veitch from Channel 13 has the first question, so I think we'll just open it up to questions.
Yeah, hi, Mayor. Thank you for having us today to talk about this issue. You know, you likened issue 1 to the New Deal, okay? And you know how that was an economic stimulus package back then. But we're we're generationally so different in the diversity of our workforce and the ability, when you talk about building new roads, that's fine for one part of the workforce, but given our current economic situation, we have across the board unemployment and a real economic crisis on our hands right now. Do you realistically think that issue 1 has any chance at all of passing?
Oh, yes, and I think it will. It does. I believe it will pass. So I can take from the tone in your voice you disagree. So let's bet a digital cup of coffee over it.
Okay, but I've got a couple other questions that have come up as well from our viewers. First of all, about our layoffs with over 300 people. How long do you think that'll take? We're
going to reevaluate it every 30 days, as we mentioned last week, and we want to bring them back as soon as possible. I don't want to litigate the past too much, but there has been some reporting about how close Toledo came over the weekend to being included in the federal relief bill that Congress just passed. It was either yesterday or the day before. Just to briefly summarize it, working with our team in Washington, and we do have lobbyists on the ground in Columbus and Washington, making sure that Toledo's interests are being fought for, working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but also the National League of Cities and the National Association of Counties. We, as of late Saturday night, had a deal in place that congressional Democrats and congressional Republicans had signed off on that would have provided $76.6 million of direct federal relief just to the city of Toledo. The formula would have worked like this. Every community that was CDBG eligible, which includes Toledo, but also includes roughly 700 cities throughout the throughout the country, would have received aid in the amount of 8 times what its annual CDBG allotment is. So in the case of Toledo, that was about $76 million. It would have been used for revenue replacement, not just for COVID-19 cost reimbursements, and it would have given us a wonderful amount of flexibility. I went to sleep Saturday night thinking that was the case, and quite literally, early Sunday morning, I was communicating with my team, my chiefs of staff, about the logistics of bringing our employees back to work, how soon we could do that, because certainly that amount of money would have allowed us to do that. This is not a political statement or a partisan statement. I'm going to refer to the reporting. I would direct you to Politico.com, the Associated Press, I think Washington Post, Sunday morning, all reported that the deal that was in place Saturday was nixed by the White House. And I know, I can only imagine that negotiations are complex, and I'm sure they were horse trading a number of things. And I'm not blaming anyone. It just is what it is. But the White House sort of put a kibosh on the $150 billion of aid to local communities, 76 million of which would have come to Toledo and would have allowed us to bring back our employees. Didn't happen. We know that Congress is going to come back around May 4th. There's going to be another bite at the apple, and we're going to be right there fighting again. That's a little bit of history, but it's also my way of answering the question. Had the deal they had Saturday night held, we would be right now putting procedures in place for welcoming back our employees. That's what we've always said, that we don't want to do this. We didn't want to do it. We didn't cause this to happen. Fate chose it. And we're going to reevaluate every 30 days. But it didn't happen. And so we are going to some extent, go back to the drawing board and come up with other solutions. So there's a lot of moving parts here. There is federal aid that may, or in this case, may not come. There is an issue on the ballot Tuesday that either will or won't pass. There is the opportunity to take some resources out of our rainy day fund. All of those things are still in play, and so we're just gonna have to be nimble and react to events as they occur. So we want to bring them back today. We didn't want to TEL them in the first place. It's just a reality that we are in, and as soon as we can provide the financial path to bring back our workforce, we will do it, and I look forward to that day. That's the best answer I can give.
Okay, one more quick question. Mayor, that we're getting a lot from our viewers as well. And this applies to the furloughed employees. A lot of our viewers are asking, at a time when you are furloughing even safety forces to a certain extent, why within each department we have communications people. Why are we hiring other communications people at a time when we're asking other communications professionals to take furloughs?
That question has come up. I think you're talking about one particular individual. That was a decision that we shared with the county commissioners. This person works with the EOC almost exclusively. In fact, exclusively, the Emergency Operations Center, which is a joint operation between the city and county. So in collaboration and discussion with the county, we joined in the decision and joined in the truly minimal cost. And I know every penny is important, but I think it was, I want to say maybe $5,000 was the amount that the city put in. Again, every penny matters, but I do think for context, it's important what we're talking about here. We decided to share in that cost for two reasons. One, it is my belief that at a time like this, when there is so much confusing information out there, that you can't have enough people working on communications. Even with this temporary hiring of this one particular individual, we still don't have enough communications officials. We have my legislative director, a woman named Gretchen DeBacker, whose job it is to write ordinances and develop policy. For the last 6 weeks, she's had to put those duties on hold and to join our communications team. And even that's not enough. We have a handful of people in the mayor's office whose duties have been reassigned to communications, and even that is not enough. If you believe, like I do, that communication is the most crucial thing to happen right now, you can never have enough bodies, whether they are well-known faces to the community or faceless civil servants. You can't have enough. Secondly, though, and this is probably unique to this one particular individual, whom I'm guessing you don't want me to name, she has over the years developed a stature within the community that allows her, in our judgment, to be a trusted, non-political face for the delivery of information. I know what the public thinks of elected officials. I know what they think about politicians and the scoundrels in Washington and the nincompoops who run City Hall. I mean, I get it. So when the question is life and death, we don't want people not responding to information just because they don't like the messenger. They don't like me, or they don't like one of the county commissioners, or they don't trust it. We felt it was important to put on a trustworthy face that has universal respect, or as close as anyone could, because of years of work in the community. And that was just the decision we made. So first of all, we need the help. We need more communications help, actually. Even that one person isn't enough. We probably need 5 more of her or him. But more than that, she has a unique respect and trust among the citizens that we felt was crucial. People need to understand messages that are coming out. We don't want them to not follow the message just because they don't like me. That was the decision we made. People are going to criticize it. I get it. It's every decision we make. Half the people are going to think it's the wrong decision. The decision's been made. We got to move on.
Mayor, the next question comes from Amy Steigerwald of Channel 11. Amy.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Question for you. So I'm wondering, we heard the Lieutenant Governor address yesterday that there could be potential cuts among fire and police in the state of Ohio. Wondering where that's at in Toledo, if that's happening or if it could happen anytime soon.
I would say, okay, here's how I would answer that. There are no uniformed police or firefighters who have received TELs. That's a fancy way of saying that no uniformed police or firefighters have been furloughed, or whatever word you want to use. True statement. It is also a true statement that for the foreseeable future, that it's not a part of our plan, and I don't see any path in the foreseeable future where we will have to take that step. That's also true. But no one can predict the future. How bad is this going to get? Are we going through a painful 3 or 4 month period of time, and then when we get back to normal, the economy is going to go right back to where it was? Okay, maybe. I hope so. Or are we at the beginning of what we all knew was coming one of these days, which was a recession, maybe a pretty bad recession, maybe another great recession, or maybe worse. If those scenarios unfold, of course, anything is possible. Anything's on the table. I will say, getting back to the little inside story I told you about our negotiations with Schumer and McConnell and Pelosi and McCarthy and the White House over the weekend. I understand that there are a lot of moving parts and negotiations involve give and take. But now for the second straight bill, cities like Toledo were left out. We were left out in the CARES Act when they established their aid formula based on population size. And they decided to only provide direct aid to cities over 500,000 people, which is only Columbus in our state, and frankly, only about 35 cities nationwide. Even when they expanded the definition by population to say that it could include counties, while every other major population center in Ohio does have a county of over 500,000 people. In Lucas County, we are just unfortunately right under the threshold. I think our population might be 455,000 at the county level. So there again, Toledo loses. I told you of my disappointment of what happened over the weekend, where Pelosi, Schumer, McCarthy, and McConnell all agreed, and Sunday morning, according to Politico, according to the Washington Post and the Associated Press, the White House killed the deal. Again, it's not a partisan statement, that's just what happened. That was disappointing. I will say this, there is going to be a fourth bill coming out of Congress that will provide relief to a number of different worthy causes. We talked about this past bill replenished the PPP program and aid for small businesses and healthcare, and they all needed it. At some point, though, if no relief comes to cities like Toledo and Columbus and Cleveland and all the rest, at some point, we may get to the point where police and fire do have to be a part of the sacrifice. And when that day comes, if it comes, I will be a voice. And I don't care if anyone listens to me or disagrees or throws tomatoes, I don't care. I will be a voice that places the blame for that at the feet of the federal officials in Washington, who so far have excluded Toledo twice and should think twice before they exclude Toledo a third time. Because if we get to that day, I will be very clear in terms of who is responsible for those safety reductions, and it won't be anyone in city government. I can assure you of that.
Mayor, the next question comes from Sarah Elms of the Blade. Mm-hmm. Sarah?
Hi, Mayor. Thank you again for taking time with us this morning. I have two questions. The first one has to do with issue 1, and I know that you have talked a lot about if issue 1 passes, that capital money that's generated will stay in the capital fund. What about the general fund money that's generated? Is there a guarantee that that could still go to things like pre-K, hiring more police and fire, recreation, or will that need to be used, to shore up this budget deficit that you're facing?
No, that's a great question. The most important thing to say about the passage of issue 1, the reason that I believe that Melissa Bates is going to owe me a cup of coffee, is because it's also going to strengthen our general fund. substantial way, $22 million a year for the next 10 years. So that is a true statement. That $22 million could become very important to our general fund in terms of welcoming our employees back, our TEL employees back, to fortifying our safety forces, and to achieving a number of objectives. I think the fairest thing to say is that everything would be on the table. And in a true collaboration with City Council, we would have to choose and decide what we value and what we don't. So I think the passage of issue 1 would be, our safety forces. If you're interested in public safety and seeing our safety forces remain strong, that's yet another reason to make sure you vote for issue 1. I think that money would be used to fortify our safety forces. And then as we follow the depth of this new economy and this crisis, we will decide what that means in terms of growing the forces, what that means in terms of all the other programs we talked about. So just from a technical legal standpoint, you are right. The passage of issue 1 provides $22 million. And I think working with City Council, we will reach a consensus on the best way to move forward with that. It is, the world has changed, and I think our expectations on what that general fund money might do, I think it's fair to say it's also changed. But again, not on the capital side. Issue 1 passes, that $500 million will be spent fixing roads. But on the general fund side, we're going to have some discussions on priorities with City Council and move forward.
Okay, thank you. The second question has to do with that amendment that City Council passed that you vetoed yesterday.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, from your perspective, was this more discussion about these, $150,000 in emergency capital funds, or was this more of, a move by City Council to try and exercise more oversight on expenditures in general?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. That is, whatever it is, it's healthy. This is okay. It's not, this isn't, no one is manning the battle stations, and, we're not going to, have a sword fight over it. It's okay. We work together very well. Like I mentioned, 93% of all ordinances we've introduced over 2 years have passed unanimously. So I think we're both learning. We're both learning. I can say I'm learning a little bit about some of the newer faces on City Council. It wasn't really until maybe the next, the City Council meeting was on Tuesday, and we had a budget task force meeting on Wednesday. And so we got right back to work. During that conversation with City Council, that is when I began to think that there just might be sort of a different philosophical opinion on the difference between capital money and general fund money. So I think it just might be that. And actually, there could be a difference of opinion on the likelihood of the passage of issue 1. Maybe I'll put it that way. As you know, I believe that issue 1 is important. It's crucial to the future of our community, and I believe it's going to pass. I don't know I don't know what others think. And so it could be, and again, I've really put a lot of thought into this. It could just be that there may be a difference of opinion on that. And maybe the thinking was that the desire to focus in on capital expenditures, maybe there was a thought that money could be used over to the general fund where we really do have a crisis. I mean, we essentially, I guess what was interesting to me is that there's such a focus on part of the budget that is really not only is it not in crisis, it is a pot of money that we want to spend to rebuild our economy. And so I really puzzled over this, and it may well be that there is a thought that this capital money could be transferred over to the general fund where it is actually really needed. I don't know if that's what the thinking is. But again, I am of the belief that this time next week, City Council won't have the ability to transfer money from capital to general because the citizens would have taken away the ability to do that as they should. That's what I think this is all about. It's okay. You know, I think it's probably more that than anything else. But look, you know, it's always, I think, was it Cleisthenes who invented democracy 3,000 years ago, I think? Probably since Cleisthenes came up with this this form of government, there has been a natural tension between the executive branch and the legislative branch, and that's okay. I will say, though, I don't think anyone on City Council wants to go back to the system we had from January of '94 to January of 18, when the only collaboration on the budget was the day the mayor dropped the budget on the council's lap on November 15th and said, you know, pass this in a couple weeks. Nobody wants that. And so the sort of collaboration we have, I think, is healthy. I think if you were to ask any member of council who's been on that body for more than 2 years and remembers how it was before, and certainly if you want to talk to someone of longer tenure like Rob Ludeman, I don't think there is any question that the collaboration we have with City Council on financial matters has never been stronger, and I can't imagine anyone would want to go back to the more acrimonious days of the past. And I don't think we will. I just think it's a matter of working our way through maybe a philosophical difference about, in my judgment, the importance of what capital money can do to build our economy versus the general fund, where, in my judgment, we need to be putting our focus. I am told that there are no more questions. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Again, anytime a question pops up on any issue, don't save it till Thursdays at 10. Get a hold of us and we'll do our best to process it. Stay healthy and happy and safe, and I know we'll all be in touch soon. Thank you.